Good morning everyone, and welcome to Kimmel Bay's vlog series, and we're continuing with our series Roadmap to Jesus, and today we're looking at betrayal. It's a very tough subject and very emotionally attached, let's say. So I'm going to read from Zechariah first to give us some context. I told them, "If you think it best, give me my pay. But if not, keep it." So they paid me 30 pieces of silver, and the Lord said to me, "Throw it to the potter," the handsome price at which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them to the potter at the house of the Lord. And we read this in Zechariah 11:12-13. So nobody likes rejection. It really hurts. Maybe you've been rejected and by a friend or a family member, and you feel like you've been stabbed in the back. It's never a pleasant feeling, and it's probably one of the most emotionally tough feelings that we get, other than loss of someone. So having invested time in a relationship with someone and enjoyed a period of good friendship and fellowship, and then being cast aside like you mean nothing, is difficult for us to swallow. But sadly, it does happen, and rejection and betrayal is not a new thing. So we read it in the book of Zechariah, which was written hundreds of years before Jesus was born. We read the story of a leader, a prophet called Zechariah. This book can be split into two sections, with chapter 1 to 8 focusing on what happened during his lifetime, and chapters 9 to 14 focusing on what was to come in the future. The future events that Zechariah speaks about, a lot to do with coming of God's chosen one, the Messiah. So we read in Zechariah 11 an interesting story of rejection and betrayal. This clearly points us to Jesus and foreshadows Jesus being betrayed by Judas to the Jewish authorities. So long story short, Zechariah is a shepherd in Israel for a time. But then the relationship with his flock is broken down and he resigns. Upon asking for his wages, they offer him a meagre reward, 30 pieces of silver. So according to Jewish law, Exodus 21:32, this is the pay of a slave who has been injured to the point they can't work anymore. So imagine that for a slap in the face, that they knew that they were going Zechariah, and he also knew that they were saying this, and imagine the worthlessness that he felt and they intended for him to feel. So we see history is repeating itself when Judas is paid 30 pieces of silver for betraying Jesus. Jesus is God's sent one, the Messiah, and was sent to God's people. Jesus is God's shepherd, but the people rejected him. Instead, they chose the path of destruction and alienation from God, as we do sometimes. So Judas went to the Jewish authorities in similar language to Zechariah, asked for his wages for handing over Jesus. You can see this comparison between Zechariah 11:12 above and Matthew 26:15, where Judas goes to the chief priests and asks, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. The betrayal of Jesus was foretold in the Old Testament. The book of Zechariah is a picture of Jesus, God's Messiah, who would come 500 years later. God's plan to save his people is so precise that even the number of silver coins Judas receives were prophesied about hundreds of years before it would happen. It was part of God's plan, and that Jesus would be betrayed and handed over to the religious leaders to be killed. This plan is by the means that which his people, us, are saved today. Jesus knew what would happen to him, and Judas met him in the Garden of Gethsemane and betrayed him with a kiss. We read this in Matthew 26:40-50. So in John 13:21 shows just how hard this betrayal and rejection was for Jesus. Jesus was troubled in the spirit. When he'd entered, he earlier had warned his disciples this was going to happen, but Jesus knew the task was set before him, and he paid the price for sin in full, so that the Lord's people could be made right with God. So Jesus is a true shepherd who cares for his sheep and who was betrayed and killed so that we may live. So that's it for today, everyone, and just think maybe on how we feel when we get betrayed, and just think of the ultimate betrayal, so that God is rejected. As Christ on the cross, God's rejected by his people, and even they wanted Barabbas, rather than Jesus to be released, and that is the ultimate rejection. And so think of our times in our lives when we're rejected, and think that even Jesus on the cross was saying, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they are doing." And let's have that in our hearts and our minds as we continue today. Have a good day, everyone, and hope to see you at church soon. Goodbye.